Hello, everyone, and warm welcome to this AHRMIO webinar. My name is Danijela Milic. I'm one of the AHRMIO board members and also an HR policy officer with the United Nations International Civil Service Commission. So on behalf of the board, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to this event, which serves as a prelude to our upcoming annual conference in Rome. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that towards the end of this event. The theme of this special conference will be empowering people, humanizing AI, and imagining possibilities in HR. But for today, thank you for joining us as we sit down to engage in a conversation with four amazing experts that we're fortunate to have with us here today, each one bringing a distinctive perspective. We will hear from Deloitte, who will discuss areas of how AI might help us focus more on the human strategic side of HR. Then we also have a representative from the United Nations Secretariat who will share with us some practical examples of change management initiatives such as UN 2.0. And then from the AIHR Academy, with whom AHRMIO recently partnered, we will gain some insights into some essential skills that are needed for the future of HR that can help the HR professionals become better in what we do. A brief note about AHRMIO for those of you who may be new to us. The Association for Human Resources Management in International Organizations, that's what AHRMIO stands for, is dedicated for furthering the management of people in not-for-profit international organizations and the governmental and non-governmental sectors. And these organizations provide the world with support and relief in peace and security, scientific research, development, and human rights and humanitarian aid. They are on the cutting edge of the development of new ideas and approaches to the problems facing the international community. And the range of organizations that are members of AHRMIO are from United Nations, the World Bank, IMFs, and many others throughout the world. So the AHRMIO continues its breakthrough and innovative approaches to leadership development, where decision makers, leaders, and practitioners come together, like we come together today, to discuss people leadership, trends, current issues, and we also try to envision what the future might look like. So in that vein, the theme of today's event is redefining HR with AI, strategic insights and future skills. So it is my privilege and pleasure to introduce to you our wonderful panelists. You have seen their bios in the announcements of the event, so I'll just briefly tell you about them. The first is Maria Demeke, who is a principal in Deloitte's government and public service practice, who designs workforce solutions using Gen AI and other innovative approaches for organizations working to end global poverty. She has 20 plus years of experience leading organizational transformations for US private, not-profit, and public sector agencies, as well as international facing clients such as the World Bank Group, the United Nations, the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID. Next from Deloitte is Michelle Fertig, who is a principal in the Deloitte's Global Employer Services and leads the global workforce consulting offering. Michelle has over 20 years of experience in helping clients to design, launch, and operate talent mobility programs that are efficient and enhance employee experience. She has authored several thought pieces on the future of talent mobility and is frequent speaker on the impact of Gen AI in HR. Liliana Uruburo is a program management officer with the United Nations Department of Management Strategy, Policy and Compliance, and seasoned leader with over 25 years of experience driving technological and process innovations in both the public and private sector. Starting her career during the dot-com boom, she has spearheaded transformative initiatives ranging from web applications to social collaborations and staff development programs. And for the past 17 years, she has focused on modernizing the United Nations, launching 2 internal corporate brands in support of critical projects, revolutionizing ICT and enhancing user adoption of enterprise systems and the cloud. Her creative, innovative approaches has fostered a global network of change catalysts. And last but certainly not least, we have Erik van Vulpen, who is the founder of the Academy for Innovative HR, known as AIHR, the largest online HR community in the world with over 700,000 monthly visitors from 140 countries. AIHR trains HR professionals in more than 325 of the Fortune 500. Erik is a globally recognized HR thought leader in people analytics and the application of technology and AI in HR, and is a regular speaker at conferences. So this was just a wonderful opportunity for us to have this great 4 people here together with us. And with that introduction, I will turn over to our esteemed guest in just a moment. But I also want to invite you, the audience, to, in the chat, say a quick hello, tell us where you're joining us from. And also at the end, we have reserved some time for Q&A, but you don't have to wait till then. The Q&A feature is open, so you can actually post your question there throughout the event. The event is recorded, and we will be sharing that recording with you. But before we dive into the conversation, let us start with a quick poll, just to see how familiar are you with the Gen AI and its potential impact on HR. So hopefully you are seeing the poll question. So there is 4 options, A, B, C, or D. So please select one. And I see that we're having people joining us from World Bank in Washington, from UN Women in Egypt, from Chennai, India. Wonderful. So we'll give it a couple of moments. I see the answers are coming in. So far, the option A, I hear a lot about Gen AI in everyday headlines, but I'm not sure how it will impact HR. It's about 60% of you are choosing that option. So that means you're in the right place. I would pick that one too. And we have also the option B. I have read some articles, attended some trainings, but I'm not sure how it will impact my organization, my job specifically. There's about 42% there. We have no takers for C and D, which is I have helped to create some use cases to pilot Gen AI, and I'm actively using Gen AI today in HR. So we don't have any takers there. Anyway, I think we can keep, I don't know, we'll keep the poll running in the background, but so far this gives us an idea that we're more into that. We're hearing about it, we're reading a bit about it, we're curious about it. So I think this is a wonderful segue into our conversation with our panelists. So then let me start with you, Maria, since this is probably you are the most familiar territory for you in this sense. How do you see AI transforming the role of HR, and what benefits have you observed so far?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here for this conversation. And good afternoon and good morning to those. I'm actually based in Washington, D.C., so morning for me. I'm going to kind of quickly go through three areas of AI in HR. One is just kind of an overview of AI, as it sounds like from the poll, many of you are familiar with it, but haven't implemented it yet, I say, or haven't perhaps been using it as often as some others. So I'd like to give an overview and then talk about some of the benefits, and then talk about a few use cases too, a few of the typical use cases that come up in HR. So let me first just kind of level set. AI has been around for a long time, probably 20 plus years. It's the generative AI that is the learning component of AI, where the computer learns and continues to develop, that is newer and in the news more and sort of is the hot topic right now. But for those working in the tech space, the AI piece is not so new. And then the way we look at it is there's sort of a spectrum of the impacts of AI. One is to automate, right? To automate work that has been done in the past by hand or manually. Another is to augment and to provide like document policies, et cetera, to help sort of generate things. Another is to expand the reach or the scale of the work that's being done. So that would be a benefit. And then the last is really to create. One of the benefits of AI right now is to create. It helps develop new skills with predictive modeling, with scenario planning, and things like that. So it sort of develops across from automating very manual tasks to really sort of creating and opening up new opportunities. At a high level, looking at AI and HR, I think the overall aim of folks sort of working in this space is to move from what can be an administrative function at times or administrative tasks to more strategic tasks. I think that's the sort of overall benefit that we see. And that's sort of what folks that we are working with in HR departments are striving for, so that those administrative tasks can become more automated, opening up to HR having an elevated role in the organization and HR professionals having an elevated role in being more strategic advisors with both their workforce and with their leadership. So having a lot of that data that often takes a lot of time to manually input and to analyze, having that become more generated by AI, or augmented, supported by AI, so that folks can be using their strategic lens more often. So I will quickly go over sort of a few high-level use cases of where AI is used sort of most prominently in HR to date. One of them you've probably heard is around job descriptions, creating job descriptions, creating requisitions, particularly as organizations start moving towards more skill-based organizations. So looking at some more sort of general templates around job descriptions and analyzing jobs, being able to analyze job announcements at scale. Right, and sort of identifying what are those skills that are needed. So again, still requires a lot of input from hiring managers and staffing managers, but it opens up sort of a new lens to how to do that. The second is performance management. And this one is a little tricky. I would say this is still sort of in development just because of the focus on being unbiased, and eliminating that unconscious bias, but being able to sort of look at the work that an employee has done in a sort of standardized way rather than a subjective way, is another. And then another I'll focus on is learning and development, the ability to produce things like training manuals, things like access to policies, the ability to sort of understand where an employee is and give them data that is tailored towards them, whether that's through a chatbot, or through doing sort of aggregate level analysis to see where skills gaps are, things like that. It's really transforming, AI is really transforming the learning and development space. And back to the original question of really what are the benefits of AI? When we look at it, like, look, AI is an ecosystem. There is going to be an ecosystem of AI. There's not going to be one solution that solves all problems. There is a cost to that. There is a cost to building AI. There is that initial cost to getting it. So, one of the big benefits is cost savings, and looking at organizations are looking at, it takes X amount of money to develop this AI or to purchase a off-the-shelf AI solution. Are we getting our bang for the buck? Is productivity getting higher? Are we reducing costs on our end? Is our quality, I would say this is probably the most important, is our quality improving because of AI? And then the other that, I'm excited to sort of talk about too, as we go forward, is how is this impacting mental health and well-being of staff? Is the ability to have AI benefiting them to have more time to do those strategic activities, to, work less overtime, to handle their portfolio of work in a more manageable way? So those are kind of the big areas that we are looking at around the benefits, and have been able to actually sort of get in and measure a lot of places, which has been really interesting. And would love to talk more about that, and would love to talk more too. I'm going to hand it off to my colleague Michelle in a moment, but I do want to give a quick plug for the conference in October. What we are thinking of doing is sort of looking at the entire life cycle of HR and going through in much more detail. I know this was just 5 minutes or so, but going through in detail on what are some of the use cases, how can AI benefit each of those tasks, and what does it take to get there? I think that's the big question in a lot of people's mind. What does it take to get there? So I will hand it off to Michelle, and I look forward to your questions coming in later.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you very much. This was a great stage opener, laying out the menu of many angles we can look at this topic from. So thank you very much for that. I'm actually going to turn to Liliana at the moment, just so we can ask you, Liliana, to share some examples of initiatives at the United Nations just like the UN 2.0 we hear a lot about, and the Quintet of Change, and how is the UN driving strategic change from within?
Thank you, Danijela, and thank you to my fellow panelists. It's wonderful to be here. So I'm not in HR, so just to qualify that, but the work that I've been doing, of course, has always been in close collaboration with HR colleagues. I have never seen technology separate from everything else. We need to see all of these things as part of a complex system, and we all need to work together. And New Work, which is a grassroots community that started in Geneva originally and has now spread globally, is really a place for UN employees who are passionate about change and want to improve our organization to come together and talk about these kinds of topics and contribute to that process, right? So it isn't just management making decisions and pushing it down on us. So we work closely with staff unions, with other organizations. A lot of actually in Geneva, it was originally driven by HR colleagues. So we've been in this space, and now UN 2.0 is really a vision for all of us about how can we truly fundamentally change our culture and how we work with one another, how we work with our partners. The power of the UN is really as a convener, of multi-stakeholder processes and dialogue to bring everyone together, to be inclusive, to have all of the voices at the table. And we're seeing this now. As Secretary General's technology envoy has convened an AI governing body. They're getting ready to release a report on inclusive AI and AI governance globally to make sure that we don't end up leaving people behind, as has happened with other technologies. Additionally, there is a lot of work in the innovation space, for example, of bringing new ways of learning. So the ILO Training Center has a course, a masterclass, which is free to everyone on AI, introductory to AI. They also developed a game, a board game, to help colleagues learn about AI. And so it's really about, introducing these new mindsets, these new practices, and making sure that everyone is at the table, everyone has an opportunity to learn, everyone can start to develop these skills. That doesn't mean that we're all going to be technologists, that we're all going to, start developing, but we need to think about how do we apply these things in a way that doesn't leave others behind, that advances our mandates. The UN mandates are very, very broad. The UN system is huge. I mean, there's tons of other examples of AI use in the UN. The UN Innovation Network actually has an extraordinary webinar library in which there's a whole section dedicated to Gen AI with a lot of examples if you'd like to learn more. And, really, it's about all of us working together, collaborating, and being a part of this process. We are all one of the key messages that we're hearing from HR a lot lately is actually that we are all as individuals also responsible for our own careers. We cannot just wait for HR or our manager to, advance our career for us. And the UN 2.0 communities of practice for the Quintet of Change, which is innovation, data, digital transformation, strategic foresight, and behavioral insight, are offering UN employees globally opportunities to develop these technical skills. And in addition, there is this culture space, and the common agenda identifies culture as the linchpin to success, not only our culture within the UN, but the culture of the multi-stakeholder processes, of our governments, of our societies. Really, all of us need to adapt. It's always been, I've been in technology forever. I've always been the early adopter, and, I always heard technology is going to save us. No, technology isn't going to save us because the technology that we build has the biases and the issues already built into it. or it's designed in certain ways to enhance profit, not to enhance human living. So it's really up to all of us to be in that space, contributing to that process, and making sure that we're not making the same mistakes we've made in the past.
Wow, wonderful, Liliana. Thank you so much for all those great insights you shared. And as a proud new worker of the initiative, I can only say to all my colleagues who are here from the UN system to join that. It's really a catalyst for change and opportunity for each one of us to do that. And I know we have some colleagues here from our partners with IE University in Madrid and St. John's here, and I proudly carry the bag that I was given as a gift while we were in Madrid last year's conference, and it says on it, "Be the change you want to make." So it is really up to each one of us to take part in all of this, whether we become technologies or not. Let's be better humans and practice what we want to see in the world, right? So thank you so much for that. And speaking of skills and growth and what we need to move ahead, Erik, I'm going to turn to you now and ask you, what key skills do you believe HR professionals need to develop to effectively integrate AI into their roles and drive strategic value?
Ooh, a whole bunch of them, Danijela. When it comes to skills, I like to visualize it as what we at AIHR call the HR AI application pyramid. So imagine you have on the bottom layer, you and I as individuals. How do we leverage AI? And in that middle layer is, how do we as an HR function leverage AI? And Maria spoke about that, had some great examples there. And then on that top, that pinnacle where we really reap the benefits is, how can we enable the organization to leverage AI? And for each of those three levels, there's different skills and different applications that we need to learn in order to really leverage the power of AI. Now, on the bottom individual level is really about how can you and I leverage, for example, AI or generative AI, probably as the biggest example of it, to increase our own performance, our own productivity and quality of delivery. I find it very interesting in the poll that quite a few people say, I've heard about it or I've read some articles, but I'm not really sure how it will impact my job yet. That's really where, at that bottom layer, you need to start experimenting with it and learn the skill called prompt engineering. How can you give to the AI the specific instructions so it actually does what you want it to do? Because an AI is not an intelligence, it's a predictive model. It puts words in the order it thinks you want it to be put in, which if you think about it, is a bit complicated, but that does mean that the order in which you put your question is very deterministic of the outcome of the AI. So in that bottom individual layer, it's really about, how do you work with the AI? How do you prompt, engineer, and get the individual value from that AI? Write documents faster. You're not stuck with that blank page problem, but the AI starts generating something for you. So you immediately think, oh, I disagree with that. And you immediately know in what direction your thinking is going. That is, I think, the big skill and the big win that you can get on that individual layer. Now, if we go one step up in the pyramid and we look at what can HR do, Maria already gave a couple of really great examples of how we as an HR organization can start to leverage AI. I think other use cases could be in talent acquisition, where we can make much more specific. And Maria, I think you mentioned job descriptions already. Better job descriptions, better outreach messages. We can outreach at a larger scale. We can leverage chatbots for people who visit our webpage to interact with someone instead of clicking on a website. And we see that over the board, that really increases convergence, and it increases the number of solid applicants that you get on a role. There's employee self-service. There's a lot of different examples that we can list. Another, I think, example that I'm very excited about is, imagine you have a manager. And that manager gives you performance every 2 weeks at Monday at noon. and it collects all the information that you have and it gives you objective feedback. That manager, does continuous feedback, continuous management. It gives you all kinds of input. Any question you ask it, it answers it directly with all the information that's available to this manager, and you never have to wait for them. Versus a manager who sits with you, does your performance review twice a year if you're lucky, maybe less, who, sometimes just doesn't open your email until a week later, and who, sometimes is nice, but sometimes is very inconsistent and just says something different than they said 2 weeks before. Which manager do you prefer? The second manager, and you probably know it by now, that's a human. The first manager is an AI because they're consistent, they have access to all your data. They're potentially a better manager. So can we maybe at some point see an AI manager? This sounds a bit far-flung into the future, but this is actually a reality that might happen within the next couple of years. So when it then comes to the skills that you need in that HR layer, in that, how does AI impact your department? That's really focused on design thinking, understanding processes, and seeing where you can slot in AI solutions within a broader process. That's about end-to-end process mapping and employee experience management. So there's these more complex layer of skills that are becoming important in order to leverage AI at different key areas within the employee lifecycle. And then finally, at the top of that pyramid is how can we enable the organization to leverage AI and be more successful, more productive, ensure business continuity, and hit on all those great notes that will give HR a seat at the table and help drive business impact. And that to me starts with you and I understanding what AI means for us as an individual. Because, how can, the blind guiding the blind, that is tricky. We need to have a base understanding of what it does, and we need to understand how we can leverage it for ourselves before we can leverage it for our department, before we can leverage it for the entire organization. And I think they're really amazing and traditional HR skills like job analysis, looking at individual tasks and seeing where is that potential for bringing in and moving out a number of these tasks to an AI, and then how can we create jobs that are still motivating, but that are more meaningful to do. And that's where we really go into these, I think, honed skills that a lot of HR professionals already have, but now we can very consciously apply them to a more AI, more technology-driven world. So that to me are kind of the three levels, the individual, the department, and then the organizational level, where I think it really starts with trying it yourself. Go to Perplexity or go to OpenAI and just try it out, see how you can work with it. Of course, be careful, don't put all the data in there that you shouldn't be putting in there, and there's a lot of risks and downsides there as well. But if you don't try, you'll never understand it, and it can really potentially revolutionize the way we work in HR and in our organizations as well.
Thank you very much, Erik, and thank you for that visual pyramid. I think that's something that it's very easy to grasp, and I think that what you're describing is the world of continuous learning and trying and playing around with it, and of course with guardrails that come with any new tool or technology or any new car you sit in. You got to kind of take a moment to adjust yourself, even though you've been driving for years and years. But I think this idea of it's around us, and let's see what we can do to maximize the potential of it. Maria asked us at the beginning, and sort of one question to ask is, what impact does this have on our mental health and well-being as well? So let me just pause for a moment, just for a little quick check-in, and let's take a little breather. And, let me know how you're doing. Thumbs up, wave if you feel like stretching. But I invite everybody, even our panelists and myself, to just do a little stretch and, reach for the sky and shake those arms off. Just imagine you're shaking off all the emails, you haven't answered yet and they're waiting in your box. So it feels good, doesn't it? Also, let's do a little movement. Let's take a quick twist to the left. Pretend that somebody's sneaking up on you. Then do it on the right side, just in case they've switched sides. So now take a sip of water as well, because remember, your brain needs water to function, and staying hydrated is very important. So now that hopefully we're feeling a little bit more refreshed, let's just jump back in. So now Michelle, you've been patiently waiting, and I'm going to turn over to you with the next question, which is basically, what is the impact of AI on skills needed for HR from your point of view?
Excellent. Thanks, Danijela. And I really appreciate that little energizer. We need those moments throughout the day, as well as humor. We wanted to bring some levity to this conversation. I think there's a lot of anxiety and fear of Gen AI. And so to bring some humor in, we wanted to use this cartoon, which we thought was actually very poignant to talk about human capabilities, because there are just certain things that AI cannot do, like empathy. And the artist of this cartoon, Timo Elliott, the irony here is that he uses AI to actually generate his cartoons. And so I think that makes it pretty funny. So with that, I'm going to talk about what is the impact of AI on skills for HR. And there's both the human skills element as well as technical skills. So as we talk about just overarching the HR human skills, Maria mentioned that AI is going to enable HR to focus less on the administrative and take on more strategic, actually more human tasks. And so, like empathy, there are certain human capabilities that are more difficult for AI to emulate and that are going to be increasingly important for HR to focus on. So let's talk about, like, what are those human capabilities? So within Deloitte, we've been talking about the importance of fostering what we call enduring human capabilities. With the rapid pace of technology, there's certain technical skills that are going to become obsolete, or processes that will automate the administrative. And so we need to focus on really what are those capabilities that are going to be valuable in the long term. And I would put these enduring human capabilities in two categories. The first is innate, and those are the capabilities that we're born with and that can be amplified. And that is like empathy and creativity. The second tranche of human capabilities are those that can be developed and that we learn through experience and through practice. And these are skills like emotional intelligence or social intelligence or critical thinking. But what are those most important human capabilities? So Deloitte publishes a quarterly report called The State of Gen AI in the Enterprise. And we survey thousands of business leaders. And what they've said in the most recent report that was published in April of this year is that the human capabilities of those organizations that are deploying Gen AI, that they expect to increase in value. So the human capabilities that will increase in value are critical thinking and problem solving, creativity, flexibility and resilience, and the ability to work in teams. So those are really those key human capabilities to be focused on. Now, on the flip side, of course, and as Erik had pointed out, there are technical capabilities as well. So HR team members have to learn to work with AI to enable it to bring value. Liliana had mentioned this, that technology is not going to save us. In order for AI to be effective, applicable, accurate, we always need to have a human in the loop here. And so skills like Gen AI literacy, the ability to design, deploy, manage, prompt engineering. So Erik talked a lot about this, like knowing what are the questions to be asking, as well as being able to spot biases in AI, or what we call the hallucinations, which is when AI models actually produce incorrect information. Those are some of the things that are going to be important from a technical perspective. But what are the most important technical skills? Again, going back to our report, The State of Gen AI in the Enterprise, leaders have said that the most important technical skills that they see increasing in value are data analysis, prompt engineering, and information research. Now, just to give one takeaway, I would say if nothing else, I think it's really important to emphasize that there is a lot of anxiety around AI and what that will do to our jobs or how people need to reskill. And I think a lot of people who hear that they need to become more strategic, that can be stress inducing, because what does that mean? Or how does someone upskill to be that way, to be a better business advisor in HR? And so I would say that we should be encouraging our teams to be confident, to lean into their humanness. Gen AI cannot replace those enduring human capabilities like empathy, which is innate. I'll just end on this final story that a couple of my colleagues were connecting and sharing information about like just what was happening in their day-to-day job. And one was saying that, she was really stressed and it's going through a difficult project. And our AI tool was capturing the notes from the meeting. And after the colleague said, yeah, they're really stressed. It's a hard time for her. The AI actually made a comment like, great job, keep it up. And the friends kind of laughed like, yeah, the AI does not have empathy. They cannot say and lean into being able to share an emotion, because clearly, saying good job, keep it up to someone who is expressing vulnerability that, their day to day is difficult. That's what AI cannot do. But as HR professionals, that's what we are very skilled at doing, and that we will need to even do more.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and thank you for keeping it real. And it is those things about artificial intelligence is not really a substitute for human intelligence. I think Maria used words like augment and extend and complement and create, and it's this us versus them. I think it gets us off on a wrong footing, right? So I think that thank you for saying that. But the anxiety and calling it what it is, I think it's important. It's change management in and of itself that it's anxiety inducing. And imagine things that as we saw from the poll, we don't really know much about. We don't know which way it's going. So I think this is very important to also hold space for that. And I'm going to turn over to Liliana now, because we want to look at it from the other side as well and look at some of the potential negative impacts of AI, and similar to those we've seen with social media, where everybody jumped in and thought this was a great thing, but there is other side of stuff. So Liliana, can you maybe share with us sort of what steps organizations can take to mitigate these risks, while one place we said integrating AI into HR practices, into our not just HR practices, but our business practices, but ensuring ethical consideration, ensuring safeguards to protect human well-being, privacy, and so on. Over to you, Liliana.
Thank you. And I was happy to hear that mental health and well-being came into the conversation. It is really important, and I feel like HR, in terms of the future, that you all could play such a critical role in maintaining the human aspect of all of this. And as you said, Danijela, the guardrails, the ethics, mental health and well-being. How do we ensure that staff are, moving forward, advancing, not being left behind? And again, this comes back to the diversity of ensuring that the voices are there. And so as you begin to develop new policies, do that in a co-creation way, and where you're including actual staff members, including the diverse populations as part of that process. And that may slow us down, but if we have AI to speed up other things, maybe we finally now have the space to really have these deep dialogues and to ensure the human connection, because we all, we're fundamentally social creatures, and this is the issue with social media. So social media, it was going to save us, right? It was connecting everybody, giving everybody the voice. But then now we know that it's linked to anxiety, to depression, to further isolation. And so I think HR could play a very big role in terms of making sure that we do stay connected, that we have those spaces to talk, to vent, whatever it is. I recently had an HR issue myself, and if it wasn't for my colleague who was so compassionate and empathetic, it would have been a much more stressful situation. And so that also comes back, talking of skills. I mean, there are technical skills, but, Michelle, you mentioned the emotional and social intellect, et cetera. But, there's other skills like listening and creativity and imagination and empathy. I mean, AI is creating art, but does it have creativity? It's a little bit different. And creativity isn't just about art. Creativity is also just thinking in different ways to solve certain issues. I think the problem with these big institutions sometimes is that it becomes so much about the policy and the process, and it's like, the letter of the law, right? Not the spirit of the law. And so we have to follow the rules and regulations. But we forget that, at the center of all of this is a human being. And we had this wonderful speaker who came to talk about the human OS. And, the greatest quote was, I am not a data point. And so, I'm not just a piece of data in the cog of this organization. And I really love that I'm starting to see a lot more sort of thinking about an organization as a organic space. We had this long period of the industrial and we're machines. The organization is a machine, and we all work 9 to 5 and this and that. And we're starting to see this trend, this shift towards we're more human. We have flexible hours, we have flexible work, telecommuting, et cetera. How can we further advance that human aspect? And if there's, ways to develop tools to automate certain parts of HR so that the HR practitioners, again, have the space to focus more on the human aspects, I think it would be really phenomenal. But really, it's the inclusion, the diversity, and making sure that everyone's heard. The prompt engineering, and has been mentioned, is really important. I was asked to create an avatar of myself as part of a retreat, and I intentionally didn't give it too much guidance, and I was mortified at the stereotypical sexist avatar that I got back. It was awful, awful. It made me so angry. I was like, I don't want to talk to Gen AI anymore. But again, we also need to guide it. Someone recently said AI is like a child. It's a toddler, and we need to teach it. I really firmly believe that the colleagues working in HR are going to play a really critical role in helping that baby evolve in a way that doesn't leave everyone else behind.
Thank you very much, Liliana. And you made me think of a paper I just recently wrote for our Scholario magazine at St. John's. And interesting, as a poet, I said, okay, I'm gonna write a little haiku, and it goes like: machines think for us, lost in automated haze, mind spark fades away. Now, can we imagine that for a moment? Is that a dream or a nightmare? Are we having AI so we can switch back and stop thinking, or this is really now the time where we actually have to be thinking more than ever, but using AI to help us read a procurement contract of 30 pages, maybe more quickly, or certain things that we can do to actually speed up and free up our space from all these data points that we have to do. But certainly humans are not data points, and us in human resources that we're now being renamed to people and culture, and we don't even, we're going back to people. We went from personnel to human, now we're going back to, I don't know where we're going to, but that human is here to stay. It's just the whole role of people management is no longer just, if it ever has been a role of just of HR, we're all responsible for our own lives and our own careers and our own active participation in the world we want to see, right? And then Erik, let me get back to you on now to see how can HR leaders, let's talk a little bit about them. How can they ensure that their teams are continuously learning and adapting to new technologies and ways of work, and preparing them for future challenges?
I think leadership plays a key role here. And I love what you were saying earlier, Danijela. You're learning a new technology. It's like driving a car, and it's the first car out there. I remember distinctly when my father came home and he was complaining that he needed to go on a computer course because everything was moving to computers and he really didn't want to learn it. For his sake, I was very happy that he did learn it relatively quickly in the end, because otherwise, there might have been dire consequences. And I think it's in a similar way happening now with generative AI. I think it's an emerging technology. So if we give it a highly complex task, and Daniela or Liliana, I love your example of, I gave it a few pointers and, make an avatar for me. Like that's one of the most complex tasks that you can give an AI because, it needs to surmise the complexity of you as an individual, like in a cartoonish picture that shouldn't have too much detail. So I think that's a great example of giving an emerging technology a task that is just way above where it can even reach. So I think when it comes to leveraging this technology, we really need to dumb it down for the sake of the technology. Maybe in 10 years, it's 100 times smarter than us. I don't know if I want that, but potentially that could be the case. But at this point, it is definitely not there. What does that then mean for leadership? I think that is really about leading by example. I used to have a manager who always struggled to get a PowerPoint on screen. And then there was this intern and they clicked on one button and, it was there. It was never a good look. And I don't think it promotes people to be very tech savvy if, the leader, the manager in this case, is not there. So I think, first of all, it's leading by example. You as a leader need to have an awareness of what's going on and you need to try it yourself, because if you don't do it, no one will do it. And then it's about creating that learning culture with that, providing the opportunity for people to learn. It can be, very, very simple. So, you get a €100 bonus if you complete, this course on sometimes it's very simple and it's weirdly effective. Or, a box of chocolates even works. I've seen managers do fantastic things in order to get people going. And sometimes that's all you need, or a friendly competition. But then it's also, and I love, Liliana, the point that you made there. It's about empowering through giving autonomy. And working with a new technology equals risk taking. And I think as HR professionals, we like to stick to the letter of the law. We like to stick to, the process, and especially when it comes to international organizations or NGO type of structures, you don't like to step outside of the defined path because there is risk in there. But the adoption of technology involves risk. And there's also a real risk of getting and being left behind. And I think that is something that we need to be aware of and that we need to balance, and that we need to have an open and honest conversation about with our stakeholders as an HR department as well. And then I think in the end, it's also about facilitating structured learning opportunities, because this is not something that you figure out on your own. Maybe a couple of people do, but this is also something that if you really want to reap the benefits on a larger scale, it is a structured change management process that we as leaders need to manage, and also give individuals the opportunities to invest time in that, to start applying this to their work, and to then keep or get that going. So I would hit those four elements: building that learning culture, leading by example, empowering through giving autonomy, and taking acceptable risks, and then facilitating more structured learning opportunities.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Erik. And I hope our leaders and future leaders, and each one of us, because we are leading our lives, and the things you shared actually definitely can have a broad and wide application to just the way we lead our lives, right? And I think it would be great now to move to the to some of the audience questions. And as I mentioned, there's a function there as well. We see a couple of questions, but just because I'm very inspired, I'm very humbled and grateful for everything you've shared with us. And if I can just see a few points, I see the future of work and the future of the world is a harmonious blend of technology and human ingenuity, right? AI empowers us to focus on creativity and connection and elevate our potentials to new heights. It doesn't push us aside. Actually, it lifts us up if you get this right. The technology is reshaping our world, but in the end, all of you mentioned empathy, intuition, resilience, inclusion. that's what will define the human experience, right? And ensuring that we're leading with compassion and with innovation and not leaving anyone behind. And that only humans can do that. Just like humans are the only ones who exclude, actually. When you think in animal kingdom, there's less exclusion than it is in humans. So hopefully we can focus back on what makes us inherently human and why we are here to begin with. And then when we see how the world is evolving, our humanity is going to become and continue to be our greatest asset. Even though sometimes we just don't know. I've never been talking more about humanity than since the AI entered the stage. And I'm catching myself now more and more talking about, hey, what does it mean to be inherently human? Now that is a poet in me, so I'll stop here and see what our audience has to say. I see one question has already been asked from Musunda Kambi. I don't know whether you would like to actually come on the screen and ask your question, or should I read it out for you? I'm going to give it a second to see if Musunda is with us. Oh, please read. Okay. So let me see what the question is. What is the difference between AI and Gen AI? Are the chat AIs also Gen AIs? Maybe Maria, this is a question for you, or you just need to unmute yourself and
let me come off mute. Yeah, great question. And it's an important one too. So the AI essentially, as I mentioned, AI has been around for a long time. It's not new. And it's essentially analyzing the data. So taking large amounts of data in some cases and looking across it and analyzing it. The generative AI is sort of the most innovative and sort of the latest, and it encompasses the ability to actually like create and continuously learn, particularly from large data sets. So AI has been around. It's about automating. It's about sort of taking data and interpreting it. And the generative AI, the difference is it can create original content, and it can learn from the prompts, as Erik talked about, and particularly relies on large data sets to do that. So hopefully that's helpful. The first part of the question.
Great. Thank you, Maria. I see a question here from Mariano Baruta, and he says that I have been using Gen AI to create job descriptions and have it rewrite feedback I want to give other people with a few keywords. What other, quote, entry level or slightly more advanced practical applications can we use in our everyday? A gateway to a more advanced, maybe. Any volunteers to take this question?
I'm happy to jump on it because it's a great question, and I think the more you work with generative AI, the more you'll find that there's more you can do with it than you thought initially that you could do with it. To make it super practical, because I think that's where the question is coming from. How can I use it? Think about drafting a policy. Say, I need to draft a compensation philosophy. Ask me all the questions you need in order to draft that document. And it will start to spew questions towards you. And with an interactive way, you start shaping that document. Of course, that document will never fully understand all the context that you have in your organization. So you still need to read it through, but it will, go a long way already. Examples that were mentioned were a meeting summary that AI is now doing. Look for coaching questions, or I'm having a difficult conversation with an employee. How can I approach this? Give me a few pointers. Having a sparring partner, and even having kind of a blue team versus red team strategy creation. I found it very useful, where you just put in a whole bunch of documents and context and then say, generate 4 distinctly different strategies. I can guarantee you'll disagree with all the strategies, but you'll come out with an even better one. And for me, that kind of blank page problem that I mentioned earlier already, I think is a great way of leveraging it. My personal favorite is I'm in a lot of hiring conversations. Back in college, when I studied psychology, and assessment psychology was one of my favorite topics. I found generative AI particularly good at defining constructs what you're testing on, for example, managerial skills, and then saying, okay, on this specific construct, generate 3 questions, indicate what a highly skilled candidate would say and what a low skilled candidate would say. And ChatGPT in this case just gives you a nice Excel with all the constructs that you're selecting for, with relevant questions and with the answers that a highly skilled versus a not so skilled candidate would give. And of course, you do need to check it, but it is much better than the questions that 95% of managers will come up with. Just a handful of examples that really show some of the impact that ChatGPT can make, or generative AI, specific now focusing on ChatGPT. I can give 5 more, Danijela, but then I'll capture the conversation again. So I'll shut up now, but there's really a lot of potential there, and I hope this gives us some flavor.
Well, you got kudos from Mariano saying excellent example and asked me questions to write a policy. As a policy officer myself, I never thought about it, and I think it's going to take a while before I can have a policy drafting conversation with an AI. But you never know. Maybe you put me now to a task to try to do that. But I think the good point is the fear of the blank page. I remember when I started this job, my boss said to me, take an old memo, take an old document. In the end, delete everything except to, from, date. But you break that fear of the blank page, because once you see something and you react to it, it's easy to edit and to remove, but you're thinking of something else. So I think this is an excellent example of how sometimes we get something that's negative or that's not it. Well, maybe Liliana is not going to use her avatar ever. She's going to use her picture, say, I'm beautiful, and this is great because this is what I look like, and this is my green glasses, which you missed. Whatever that is, I think to be seen for who we truly are, I think that's what we're trying to do. So when we're talking about recruitment processes, I don't want to sit across a rehearsed panelist or across a rehearsed candidate for that matter. I think hopefully some of that reality will be starting to come out when we stop pretending and trying to sound perfect or worrying about our accent or all these things that we do, that we sort of take for granted, that when you hear an accent, there is actually 2 lives behind that, at least 2, maybe sometimes 3 and 4. But it depends what are we going to do with it? And if we lead with empathy and lead from the heart, and I think we have a better chance of that by using some of these things is actually to get us to think and to get us to use our brains and our humanity. I think that's a wonderful example, Erik. I don't know if there's any other questions. Does anybody actually wants to come online? Oh, Michelle, you want to jump in and add something?
Yeah, Danielle, I wanted to
Please.
just add that in order to help increase adoption of using this technology in our professional lives, I think starting with our personal lives, that's another way to keep AI at the forefront or top of mind. So just playing with it and not think about how do I use this for my job, but how do I help just my personal life production of how I manage my household or my itineraries. As an example, you could use it to help come up with ideas on what to do for your summer vacation over a limited time frame and budget and destination preferences to come up with ideas. I mean, just being able to play, that will inspire new ways of thinking on how then you could apply it in other areas.
I think that's a fantastic idea. You start small and start playful, right? Because we are using AI, whether we are aware or not, right? We're all using spell check. We're using Grammarly. We're using a whole slew of things that we may not be aware that we're using them. So just developing that consciousness, as you say, Michelle, and starting small where the stakes are not so high, right? Rather than turning on something. But what it is not, you cannot put something in, push a button and submit your assignment or a research paper. We're seeing now in academia a whole host of articles being rejected or being actually retracted because of just stuff splurred out there without anybody. I mean, you're not going to put your name to something that you haven't actually poured your sweat and blood in. But you don't have to start from scratch because there's a lot of things out there that we can use. So thank you very much for adding that. Let me maybe just
jump in.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead,
super
Liliana.
quick. So Michelle, the first point about the blank page that you made earlier, I think this also comes back to inclusivity. Some people are introverts. They're not going to immediately speak up. So having something ahead of time that people can look at and review makes it a lot more inclusive because people have time to process and think about it and come back with feedback. And Michelle, until it starts doing my laundry, I don't think much of my personal life otherwise. Do the laundry, walk the dog.
There we go. That's a challenge for the
But no,
developers
it is
out
a
there.
great point to start from a personal perspective. I had a manager once. We were trying to implement a wiki, and she was like, "No, I don't do technology. Simply, I don't do technology." I said, "Are you on Facebook?" And she said, "Oh yeah." I says, "You do technology." And this is like Facebook, but within the UN. And then she got it. So it does help from that perspective.
Awesome. That's really great. I think we're starting to demystify and to try to open this conversation in a friendly and lighthearted way, right? We're talking about serious things. We're talking about, I mean, when we could look at AI from a variety of things. There are AI soldiers out there preparing for warfare, right? And I'm thinking we should use AI to find cures for diseases and help the doctor who opens a patient to quickly identify its 3,000 images that it can go through much faster than any human brain, right? So again, this good and bad, like anything in life, we just have to put guardrails and to make sure we do this and in a right and ethical way. And there's a whole host of discussions going on AI ethics, and actually UNESCO is leading some of that, and some of great academics that we will actually have at our conference. So actually, let me get to that now to tell you a little bit about what's coming up next, because this was really an appetizer of what we're hoping to continue at our annual conference. So AHRMIO has an annual conference every year. This year is a very special one. It's a 25th anniversary conference. It will take place in Rome. The dates are 28 to 30 October. The topic, the broad theme is empowering people, humanizing AI, imagining possibilities. So see, AI is just a little smart part here, there, because we really want to talk about the people, the human side, and the possibilities that we could only imagine through it. So please save the date. Registration is already open, so you can go ahead and register for that. Also follow us, follow AHRMIO, AHRMIO.org website, also hashtag AHRMIO. We're on LinkedIn. We're basically an association of people, of like-minded people that get together and create this space. AHRMIO is just like Liliana mentioned, UN being a convener. AHRMIO is a convener of conversations that are happening, but also are not happening. We're also able to broach topics that are sometimes uncomfortable and look at them from different angles and be skeptical and be optimistic and be whatever we can be, right? We come and AHRMIO has had AI on its agenda since many years. In one way or the other. Mental health, well-being, some of these issues that are hype now. I personally think that AI is just one big hype, that what we're talking about more underlining issues that are behind that. But if AI gets us around the table and gets us to have this conversation, then wonderful, it achieved what it needed to do. It provoked us one way or the other, right? And I think that's what we want to see, more dialogue, more inclusion, and different voices around the table. So I'm just really delighted that we were able to hear from experts at Deloitte who are the forefront in all of this, from Liliana, who is doing magic in trying to transform an organization which has roots that are 8 decades deep, and also from you, Erik, who in the learning space is doing wonderful things to make sure that learning is not just something we step out of our work to do, but we do as we walk, as we breathe. That learning culture is just part of being alive, as I like to say. So thank you, each one of you, Maria and Michelle and Erik and Liliana, for your time here, for sharing all your insights, for all the tips and documents and links you mentioned. We will be able to share all of that with you in the post-webinar in things. I would like also to ask one more poll. I don't know if we have time for that, but maybe Leslie, and also opportunity to introduce Leslie. Leslie is the executive manager of AHRMIO from the Kenneth Group, which is our partner, who makes me run. I wish I was an AI sometimes so I can do multiple things, but this is the best you got today for the money you paid for this webinar. So, but Leslie is here to make sure that everything runs smoothly. So thank you, Leslie. And also Leslie is the face, not the avatar, but the real face behind that info@ahRMIO.org, where you get emails. So you may want to whitelist that address and also ask her any questions. She can also help you with membership. If you're a member of AHRMIO, you also have a special discount with AHR Academy, thanks to Erik and his team. So there's quite a lot of opportunities for you to be involved in one way or the other. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you at future events, hopefully seeing you in Rome. And let's just see that last poll, Leslie, if you're able to launch it. Great. So we are seeing the poll here now is, which of the following areas are you curious about related to Gen AI? And here you don't have to choose one, you can choose many. So this will also help us prepare the agenda for the conference. And also you will have Michelle and Maria there in Rome with us, and maybe others. So they will know what more they can share with you. So let me see. Oh, here we have an even split. Okay, 25, 25, 25. Okay, now question C, I would like to know what skills are needed to use AI. So great, we still have people who are learning about it, and that's great. You're welcome. As we said, it's about inclusion. You can be an expert, come here, tell us, share with us. You can be complete novice, ask us the basic questions. That also is helpful. Even about what does it mean? Does Gen mean generative? Does it mean Gemini? What does it mean? So sometimes demystifying some of these words and some of these concepts is also very important. So actually, basically everybody wants to know everything there is to it. I don't know, Leslie, if you can pull back the first. I feel bad that some people did not have an opportunity to vote in the first poll, and in the interest of inclusion and making sure that everybody's voice gets heard. We can probably repeat them in the email. I don't know when we send it out to you. But if you wish to still mark your vote in the first poll, which is, how much do you know about AI? Feel free to do that if possible. I don't know what is possible. I'm asking Leslie to do 17 things behind the scenes. I'm not sure if that is possible, Leslie, but oh, it is. See, you ask Leslie, she's better than any AI. She makes magic happen. So I don't know if it's still possible for you to submit your vote on the first one, but if you haven't had a chance, we'll find a way to have your voice heard. So thank you once again. Please be well, keep well, do well, take care of yourselves, take care of your health, take care of one another, and see you later. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.